This is Big Podcast.
It's the marketing podcast for podcasters. Build a Big Podcast. I'm David Hooper, and this is the podcast about growing your podcast audience, making content, specifically a podcast, that people care about, making a podcast that people are going to tell their friends about, that people are going to miss if you are gone. How many times have you skipped an episode and crickets? Nobody cares. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to touch people, man. I want people to care about what you're doing. Stick around, and we're going to talk more about that. This is the audio edition of my weekly newsletter. That is called Big Podcast Insider. You can find it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. And in this issue, we are going to talk about this. Podcasting device from the Bible Belt. Steve Albini's lessons for podcasters. 34 ways to make money as a creator, that's you, podcaster, with examples. Oops, I bought a fake Shure microphone. It doesn't matter how podcasting works. Also, some classified ads, things that will help you to grow your podcast, make a podcast that people care about, make a podcast that people will miss, and they'll reach out to you about if you miss an episode. This episode of Build a Big Podcast is brought to you by Riverside.fm, a virtual studio that makes recording and editing at the highest quality possible, accessible to anyone. Riverside records you and your guests locally, bypassing poor and unstable internet connections and giving you studio quality audio and video that's going to make you and your mother proud. How many times have you had a great guest, you're in a great interview, and all of a sudden, it sounds like they're underwater? Kid jumps on Netflix, bad internet, who knows? But you're not going to have that with Riverside. Even if you do have that, because everything is recorded locally, the file that you edit and the file that your listeners are going to hear, it sounds perfect, crystal clear. You're going to sound like you're in the same room regardless of where you are in the world. Studio quality recordings, video resolution up to 4K. Not for me. No. That's way too high res for me, but you've got it if you want it. And you can try it right now for free. Go to riverside.fm, sign up for a free account. They're going to give you a couple hours. Check it out. Look under the hood, kick the tires, see how you like it. That's enough for an interview, maybe 2 interviews. If you want to stick around, I've got a discount code for you. That code, Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's going to get you 15% off. Go right now, get your free account at riverside.fm. Check it out, see how you like it. And if you want to stick around, the discount code to get 15% off, that's Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. Hey, you've been here before. You know the deal. I go from thing to thing to thing. And in between those things, you're going to hear this sound. Why? Because all of these things are about podcasting, audience growth, making you sound better, making a podcast that people care about. And I want to make it easy on you. Don't write any of these things down. I've got all the links and more info at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is episode 180. So when you hear this sound, that's where to go. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. You ready? Podcasting advice from the Bible Belt. I grew up in the Bible Belt. I'm here right now, the buckle of it. When I was growing up, sit down, kids. Let me tell you how it used to be. We had the big 3 television stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and about a dozen low-power stations, often with a faith healer speaking on camera, as if you were talking to a single person. Not a lot of television entertainment options back in the day. So I'd be flipping around, and you'd see a guy, and he would say something like this. I'm talking to you. Right now, I see you there, sitting there with insert ailment here. You've got no hope. And he would go on and on and on and on. You'd touch your hands to the TV screen, and you'd be healed. Of course, it wasn't free. These guys wanted donations. I'm not going to get into that, but you get the idea. I'm going to channel that 1970s touch the TV screen faith healer right now, and I'm going to do something similar. You're listening to this, and okay, maybe it's not you, but it's somebody listening to this. And this is a common problem, so if it is you, you're not the only one. Podcasters often find themselves inundated with guest pitches, many which don't align with their podcast theme or audience interest. That's going to happen. People ask for things. So if you've got a podcast, it doesn't matter if you've had 5 downloads. You're going to get emails. I want to be on this podcast, or this person would be great for you to interview, and they'll send you a long-ass list of stuff that they can talk about. A lot of times it's about entrepreneurship, building businesses, selling businesses, making money. Those guys are everywhere. I call them the exciting entrepreneur. Those guys are a dime a dozen, and they are all pitching podcasts. I don't have an issue with that. Like I said, people can ask for anything they want. The problem occurs when to maintain relationships, or perhaps just a fear of missing out, podcasters accept mismatched pitches. Maybe your podcast isn't about entrepreneurship. I mean, you could argue that this podcast, Build a Big Podcast, it's about building a business through podcasting, through sounding better, through spreading your message, through tightening up your message. But all the time, these guys are emailing me, reaching out to me, and they're saying, I think this would be a great guest for your podcast. And it's not a great guest. It's somebody who sold a business, made a lot of money in the business. Great. It's a match for a podcast, just not this podcast. So imagine that. If you're listening to me talk about sounding better, how to spread your message, how to tighten up your message so that it spreads, basically how to make a podcast that people care about, and there's somebody who comes on that I'm interviewing that isn't talking about that, that's a disconnect. And that's where the problem is. Sometimes these people are your friends. They've got an agenda. You've got an audience. Let me get access to that audience. Well, it's not really for me. Yeah. It's for some of them. It's for some of those people. Some of those people are doing this. They're going to relate to this. Yeah, some of them are. If the audience is big enough, some of them are into anything. But don't let somebody neglect 95% of your people to reach 5%. That's the point. This is essential for you to remember. Your primary allegiance is to your audience, the bulk of your audience. And to do that, the podcast you produce has to have integrity. Again, inner faith healer here. You're frustrated. You're just starting out. Maybe you feel like nobody cares about your podcast, and these exciting entrepreneurs, they care because they want to be a guest. Oh, they're acknowledging you. They want to be a guest on your podcast. Don't do it. It's okay to say no to these guys. If the topic being discussed isn't a match for your podcast, regardless of the relationship you have with these people, regardless of how popular these people are, regardless of your fear of missing out, do not let them on your podcast. Do not let somebody who pitches you change what he wants to talk about to be on your podcast. Oh, I got a podcast. I could be on Build a Big Podcast. No, man. You pitched me on some exciting entrepreneur stuff. You wanted to talk about selling your business, and now you want to get on here? No. This podcast isn't for everybody. Your podcast isn't for everybody. You got to say no, and that's okay for you to say no. Being selective ensures that your podcast remains relevant and engaging for listeners. If you're all over the place, you're in trouble. Try to please everybody, you please nobody. So here's how to decline a pitch. Be polite but firm. Do not leave an open door or extend the conversation any longer than necessary. This is what I would say, something like this. Hey, thanks for thinking of us. This isn't a match at this time. You don't know these people. You don't need to be overly nice. You don't need to be rude. But these guys are sending you a form letter. They've sent it to 1,000 other podcasters. You are one in the crowd. Churn and burn. Do not get sucked into that. Now, if somebody's listening to your podcast, hey, I really like this. I think I'd be a match. And they're not a match. That's still okay for you to say no. Be polite but firm. Hey, man, this really isn't a match, but I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks for reaching out. You can be nice, but also firm. It's not a match. You don't need to go into what might happen in the future. Have you ever had this? I think back to when I was single. You might have had this happen. You're interested in somebody. It's like, well, you never know what's going to happen in the future. Don't give people hope when there's no hope. Don't do it. That's not fair, man. It could be a match someday. No, it's not a match now. Thanks for pitching. Let somebody pitch one of the other 800,000 podcasts. And by the way, you've got to be firm on this stuff, even if you get the interview, if it's not the interview that you want, if it gets hijacked, if it's off topic, if somebody doesn't come with the correct microphone and it doesn't sound good. Sometimes you got to let stuff go, man. Hey, I really didn't get what I wanted. I can't release this. Can we do it again? Well, yeah, we're going to put you at the end of the schedule. Or no, we can't do it again. I gave it a shot. I've already spent too much time on it. I got to go. Protect the bag, man. Protect your audience. Protect your podcast and the integrity of the podcast. You do this by setting clear boundaries around guest selection. That's what preserves the coherence of your podcast, and it also builds respect for your editorial choices. Trust yourself. Don't let fear of missing out get you. If you got thoughts on this, let me know. You know what else I'd love to hear? I'd love to hear the worst pitch that you've ever had. Somebody who came to you and you're like, what was this guy thinking? I want to know about it. You can reach out to me via Mastodon, Blue Sky, or Threads. You can find those links at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Hey, let's talk about Big Podcast Amp. If you like the newsletter, you like the podcast, you're going to love Big Podcast Amp. That stands for Audio Monetization Program. It's a personal coaching program, and it's designed to help you do 3 things. 1, grow your podcast audience. 2, get people talking about your podcast. 3, make more money with your podcast. You can get details at bigpodcast.com/amp. That's bigpodcast.com/AMP. Steve Albini's Lessons for Podcasters. Just last week, Steve Albini passed. Way too young, 62 years old, I think he was. And if you're not familiar with him, let me get you up to speed. He was a record producer and audio engineer. He worked on several thousand albums over his career. It's hard to believe, but he was constantly working. He did a lot of classic recordings: Nirvana, Pixies, Bush, The Breeders, PJ Harvey, Jesus Lizard. His death got me thinking about a well-known letter that he wrote. He wrote it to Nirvana. They were looking for a producer for their fourth album. In Utero is the album, if you're familiar with that. And it's got some great advice for creative people. I think you should look at it. I've got it linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. The issue is 180. But let me give you 5 big takeaways from this letter that I think are going to help you with your podcast. 1 is that you are in charge. You are in charge. That's just what I was talking about when it comes to guests approaching you. They're not in charge. You're in charge. Is that guest a match for you? Yes or no? That decision is up to you. 2, you know what's right for you. Again, on the guest thing, people say, well, no, this will work for your audience. Will it? Don't tell me what will work for my audience. I know what will work for my audience. You know what's right for your podcast. 3, the raw performance. I call this the moment. That moment in time that's captured on tape. That is the heart of any recording, and you can create that anywhere. I'm actually thinking about doing a version of this podcast, and let's say it's a series. I don't know. It's going to be a lo-fi version of Build a Big Podcast. Different episodes, but doing them in my office with a Shure SM58 mic. No big production. I mean, I'm going to edit them, obviously. You know me. They're going to be edited, but no noise gates, no compressors, no de-essers, no big broadcast microphone. Raw messages from me to you. That's what Steve Albini's talking about, that raw performance, the moment on tape. The info is still good. You obviously want a level of good recording. You want that performance. You want that energy. You want that feeling to be captured. All performances are not equal. However, equipment or where that performance is captured, that's at the bottom of the list when it comes to importance. Is it important? Yeah. It's all important. But what's really important for you to get that podcast message out there, that's you. That's the content. That's the energy that you bring, your knowledge, your specialized knowledge, your opinions, your experiences. That's what's really important. The raw performance, I call it the moment, is the heart of any recording, and you can create that anywhere. Number 4, great artists put the work first, not the money. I know a lot of podcasters. Everybody else is making money. I need to make money. These charge for guest type operations. I should do a full episode on these. Or doing a great episode and then going to the guest. Hey, you want to give a boost to your episode? Charging the guest for what should be your job. Your marketing, advertising. I'm seeing that more and more. And what ends up happening when you start doing that, acting in that way? You start chasing the money. Well, this guest is good, but this guest is okay, and he's got money. Because you're going after the money. And that's okay, I guess. But is that a podcast that people want to listen to? Not really. Ask yourself that question. If you knew that guests on a podcast were paying to be on a podcast, or guests on a podcast were only selected because maybe they weren't paying to be on the podcast, but they were paying for the ads to promote that podcast, would you listen? And if you're saying, yeah, I'd listen, that's probably because you're in that business. You're trying to justify that people will listen to you if you do that. Most people are not going to listen. Great artists put the work first, not the money. Put the work first and the money follows. Number 5, great work doesn't have to take a long time to create. And it may be better with urgency, but you have to do the pre-work. And this is interesting, especially if you're a Nirvana fan. He wanted to get in the studio with these guys, knock the album out in a couple of weeks. Can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. You got to do the pre-work, though. You've got to have the songs written. You've got to be ready to go. Some people don't do the pre-work. Somebody like the Rolling Stones, they just go. They're writing the songs in the studio. They got tape after tape after tape after tape after tape. They're the Rolling Stones. They've got a lot of money. Other people, it's going to take them 2 weeks just to mic the drums up, get the drum sounds they want. That wasn't In Utero by Nirvana. It is raw. And I think when it comes to podcasting, That is our advantage. These things that he's talking about, you are in charge. You know what's right for you. The raw performance, the moment being the heart of the recording that you can create anywhere. Great artists put the work first, not the money. And also great work doesn't have to take long to create, and maybe even better with urgency, but you have to do the pre-work. That's the advantage that we've got. This is not radio. This is not broadcast television. This isn't even YouTube. But you've got to have a certain level of quality. You've got to show up with the energy. You've got to show up with a basic microphone that's going to capture that performance. Anyway, I want you to read the letter, see it in his words. It is iconic, and it will help you with your podcast. This is at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, episode number 180. 34 ways to make money as a creator, including as a podcaster, with examples. A couple stats for you. Almost 30% of full-time creators, including podcasters, make less than $10,000 a year. The next highest percentage, this is just over 15%, earn more than $150,000 per year. Most of the people in this second category, the over 15% that earn more than $150,000 per year, they do things differently. They don't just do a podcast. They've got things like brand collabs, brand content creation. They've got newsletters that have ads and affiliate offers. They've got long-term brand partnerships. They've got a paid community. I've got a full list. Again, this is 34 ways to make money as a creator, including a podcaster, with examples. Obviously, not all of these options are going to work for you, but a lot of them will. Something that I've found through 25 years of self-employment, that options are always good. You do not want to be caught with just a single form of marketing or distribution or income. Ask the guys who are only on YouTube working that algorithm, what happens when the algorithm changes? Or Google, or fax machines, or CDs, whatever. It happens again and again and again and again. And we get excited about, oh man, let's go. Podcasting is where it's at. Yeah, it can be. Let me tell you a story about a guy I know who's doing this right. This guy's making over $1 million a year in speaking fees. $1 million every year. He's making about $25,000 a speech. Still has other things in motion. Why? Because he's seen a lot of speakers get caught in the trap of having to speak in order to bring in money for themselves. And what happens when you can't get on the road? What happens when you get sick? The flu. Maybe there's a pandemic. I think a lot of people over the last few years, we've learned how volatile our businesses are, and we had no idea they were that volatile previously. Again, fax machines. Oh man, this fax machine is great. Email, great. YouTube, great. No, man. No. Everybody I know that's making money online, something happens. Amazon right now, they're banning AI content. YouTube, they've got issues with AI content. Google's going to ban AI content. Seems like a good thing, but you can just knock it out. You got 1 billion pages, 1 billion books, 1 billion videos. Oh yeah, man, I'm doing real well. Till somebody flips the switch and it's done. Pandemic did that for speakers. Anyway, this guy knows that. $1 million a year as a speaker. And he's still got other things in motion. Even if nothing happens, this dude's popularity isn't going to be what it is now in the future. There are highs and there are lows. And you're going to have that with your podcast. You cannot count on the popularity of your podcast today being there next year, being there in 5 years. Yeah, you're probably going to still be around. But the time to hit is now, man. Ride that surfboard. Get those things in motion. And don't just count on that one wave, because that wave is not going to be there. I got those 34 ways linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 180. Oops. I bought a fake Shure microphone. You know, Shure SM58, the #1 mic in the world. Consider this a warning if you're buying that microphone specifically for your podcast. Not only is it the most popular mic in the world, it's also the most counterfeited. I knew this. I bought one off eBay. I was working on a project. I needed a couple of them. Got one off Amazon, an authorized dealer. Got one off eBay. Saved myself about $10. So, $10 is $10. It wasn't so cheap that I had the red flags up. Because some of these counterfeits are like $30, It's a $100 microphone normally, by the way, if you're not familiar with this. I think it was $79, $89. Yeah, I'll save myself a few bucks. This thing comes in the mail. Had I not had another one right next to it, I never would have known. And that can be a problem when you plug it in, you're getting the moment on tape, and that mic fails on you or doesn't sound as good as it could have. You can't repeat the moment, man. The moment is gone. You got to capture it when it happens, and that's the reason you want good equipment, reliable stuff. That's the reason you want authentic gear. I'm not making a judgment on fake stuff. I don't want to get into the ethics of it. It's kind of a non-issue to me, except that if you're buying that stuff, when it comes to audio, it's not going to hold up like the original. It's got a buzz. It's got fake parts. It's just not going to sound good. By the way, if you're not sure where your mics come from, you might be using one of these mics right now. And if you don't have the ear, you might not be able to tell. Don't mean to scare you, just saying it's very common. I've got photos of both the real mic and the fake one up at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've also got good news for you if you want to get a real mic. I mentioned that Amazon is an authorized dealer. The real thing, it is on sale right now, $89. It's $10 off, so save yourself $10 and get the real thing, man. Check out these photos. You're not going to believe how good these counterfeits look. They're newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 180. It doesn't matter how podcasting works. True story. For years after I'd switched from an answer machine to voicemail, remember answering machines? They were these standalone boxes. They had a speaker on them. The later ones were digital. The original ones, they had a cassette deck in them. And somebody would call you up on the telephone, ring, 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 and you hear a message, "Hi, it's David. I'm not around. Please leave a message." And through the speaker, you could hear who was calling, which allowed you to screen calls. So years after I'd switched from an answer machine to voicemail, which goes somewhere into the cloud, you're not listening there on a speaker, my mother would call me, and she would start every message that she left as if it were an answer machine. She'd say, "David, if you're there, pick up." I didn't mention it. She just assumed I was there. It's not my job to explain how voicemail works. You may be in a similar situation when it comes to podcasting. You may want to talk about how podcasting works and try to explain it, but we don't need to explain how podcasting works for people to enjoy a podcast. If you find that somebody doesn't know what a podcast is, just tell them this. Say it's similar to radio, but online. Send them to YouTube. Send them to your website. Send them to Spotify. Wherever they are, you send them there. You don't have to say, well, there's a better way. You can get this thing called a podcatcher and download it via something called an RSS feed. RSS is a packet. Blah, 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 blah. You know, old school podcasters, they love to do that. They love to get into the nooks and crannies of how podcasting was developed. And 5 minutes later, you let them go. Well, you know, it's Adam Curry back in. You're going to lose people, man. Get them listening. As far as they're concerned, it's the same as radio, just like when they watch Hulu or Roku or Netflix on a TV, it's TV to them. Cable television, not broadcast television, cable television. It works same as TV, though. Podcasting, same as radio. It's just on the internet. That's all you got to do. Problem solved. I got a funny joke about this. You can see it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, issue 180. I got some classified ads for you. These are things that are going to help you grow your podcast, sound better, make a podcast that people care about. Podpage. Join over 25,000 podcasters and create a beautiful listener-friendly website from your RSS feed. Do you need to know what an RSS feed? No. You plug it into Podpage, you get a beautiful pre-populated podcast website. It's super easy. You can try it for free. I've got a link for you at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Your podcast needs a webpage. These people that don't know what a podcast is, they know what a webpage is. Get mypodcast.com and send them to your webpage that you made via Podpage. Again, I've got a link for you to try that free. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue 180. The $100 podcast studio from Focusrite. This includes a Vocaster 1 audio interface, the Vocaster DM1 mic that's similar to the Shure SM57, Focusrite studio headphones, and all the cables that you need. It is perfect for a solo podcaster or somebody doing only remote interviews. Have you heard this mic? The last episode of Build a Big Podcast, I tested the Focusrite Vocaster 1 mic and another model, the Vocaster 2 mic that comes with the Vocaster 2 studio. If you've got two people in the room, that's a $200 studio. That includes the Vocaster 2 mic, studio headphones, the cables that you'll need. Both these mics, they sound great, and you get them with the interface, the studio headphones, all the cables, under $100. I've got the link to get the deal. Also, a full review of each of these. If you're looking to step up your podcasting game, $100, you're ready to go, man. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com to make that happen. When you're ready, here's how I can help you even more. If you want the shortcut to building a podcast people care about, I got a couple free things you're going to want to take advantage of. One, Big Podcast Extra. These are short emails to help you build an audience, attract clients, and make money via podcasting. That's called Big Podcast Extra. Also, the Podcast Growth Toolkit, the Swiss Army knife of podcasting, templates, release forms that let you get your podcasting business and your marketing in order. Again, I call it the Swiss Army knife of podcasting. You can check both of these out for free. I've got them linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If you got a little bit of a budget, and I'm keeping this cheap because I love working with independent podcasters, Big Podcast AMP, the audio monetization program, personalized coaching for indie podcasters to help you grow your podcast audience, build your authority, brand, and reputation. If you want to work with me personally, this is the way to do it. Again, I keep the price low because I love working with independent podcasters. A lot of my work, it's with bigger podcast companies. It's with bigger corporations. And to be honest with you, I kind of feel like a sellout. Just between us, I like walking in those places, boom, double middle fingers up. But hey, sometimes you got to follow the money. How I really like to earn my money is working with independent podcasters. So I've got a special deal for you. It's called Big Podcast AMP Audio Monetization Program. You can find out more information at bigpodcast.com/amp. Go there now. It's a long letter. I want you to read it all because it's important. We're going to work, man. This isn't just sit around, don't change anything. All the listeners are going to come to you. You're going to have to change some things. But I will hold your hand. I will work with you every step of the way. When you're ready for more listeners and to have more success via podcasting, it's available to you and I can help you make it happen. Bigpodcast.com/amp, bigpodcast.com/AMP. Thanks for listening to Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. You want to make sure that you never miss an episode. You're subscribed, right? What? Let's fix that right now. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That's the URL. I've got 3 buttons for you. I make it easy for you. 1 click is all it takes to subscribe and never miss an episode. 1 for iPhone, 1 for Android. 1 is the old-fashioned RSS feed that old school podcasters love to talk about. I've got all 3 of them there at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I've also got a QR code that you can scan. It takes each episode of Build a Big Podcast from the Big Podcast supercomputer, and it transfers it to your mobile device. All you got to do is scan it. And you can do that at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast. Hi, you're on my radio show. Oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. No, it's way too late. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, too bad I don't have you on speakerphone. This is great content, baby. No, it's good. I just happened to have this thing on the tripod and saw you. My ringer is actually off, so. Babe, you're looking out for me today, and I appreciate it. Not today. I'll take care of it tomorrow when you're doing your shoot. All right, baby. See you. Bye.